real ask for Purple Angel. Purple Angel. Purple Angel. You're next to me.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am Lori LeBay, your host and founder. I'm also a daughter of a mother who had dementia for 30 years, and it was life-changing for me, and that's why I created Alzheimer Speaks. You see, we're an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort around the world. We also help companies expand their brand footprint by leveraging our content and our platforms to increase access to those in need of their services, tools, and products. I also like to thank all of our listeners because you guys are so loyal to us. You have just committed your time to share our content, which means so much. And not only to us at Alzheimer Speaks, but to those who you share it with. You've just built this spider web, and we so appreciate you taking that time. You see, your likes, your clicks, and your shares are really making a difference in the battle of dementia. Getting that information out to people in need is so critically important. And again, we just thank you and hope you will continue to share all of our different platforms, from our radio show to our blog to our YouTube channel, our website. There's just so much out there, and our goal is to raise everyone's voice. And speaking of raising everyone's voice, we would love for you to be one of those voices. Most people who participate in Alzheimer Speaks community have been touched by it. They've got a story to share. And so we interview people with dementia. We interview families who are dealing with it, and friends, advocates, business professionals. We've had movie directors, songwriters, authors, advocates, you name it. We want to talk to you because we all play a hand in this, and I think it's just so critically important. Now, before I introduce my two patiently waiting guests in the wings here, I always like to give a couple of shout outs to a few different companies. And the first I want to mention is the Silver Dawn Training Institute, who equips professionals and loved ones both with a new way of communicating with those individuals who are diagnosed through introspective improv. And they really bring a fun approach, which is unscripted, unconventional, and what they call unapologetic. And they deal with real life scenarios, and they consider your situations, your patients, your loved ones' vantage points in all that they do. And I am really excited because they are coming to White Bear Lake, Minnesota, August 6th and 7th for a training for their Certified Dementia Communication Specialists training. And I'm going to be there. And I would love to see you join us as well. You can register by just going to www.cdcsdementiaraw.com. That's cdcsdementiaraw.com. And it's a 2-day program that I know will be fun. I've personally met and talked with these gals, and they are absolutely adorable. And I've had several friends go through the certification as well, and they just compliment it so highly. Second, I want to give a shout out to my friends at the Roberto app. The Roberto app is a really cool product. In fact, Dr. Nussbaum, who's with us today, is also involved with that. Measures brain function through video games that are really fun and engaging, and I highly encourage people to check them out. And they can just go to therobertoapp.com and get more information there. You can also go to alzheimerspeaks.com and actually get an extended free trial by putting in the code too. So if you just go to our homepage, you'll find an ad right there. Next, I have to give a shout out to Maria Shriver and her Women's Alzheimer's Movement, the Move for Minds she's got going on throughout June. And if you're not familiar with it, it's something that you'll want to check out. And you can just go to the women'salzheimersmovement.org for more details there. So let's get to know why we're really here today. I am excited to have a couple of representatives from WellQor with us. And WellQor is a company that helps seniors live healthier and happier. And who the heck doesn't want that? You know, what a great thing that is, a great concept. WellQor is a full service psychology practice offering comprehensive examinations which include cognitive, emotional, and social, psychosocial factors that allow them to really render an accurate diagnosis along with proper treatment. Two key things there, accurate diagnosis and proper treatment. We don't always hear those two things going hand in hand, I'm sorry to say. So their team consists of licensed psychologists and social workers, and I think their concept is really quite unique and exciting, and I'm thrilled to have them with us today. So first I'm going to introduce Dr. Paul Nussbaum, and he is back with us. I've had him on the show a couple of times, and he is the Chief Clinical Officer for WellQor. He is a board-certified clinical psychology and geropsychology with a specialization in neuropsychology. So you can't get too many more psychologies in there. He's kind of got the corner of the market there. He is a fellow at both the National Academy of Neuropsychology and the American Academy of Clinical Psychology. He is the founder and president of the Brain Health Center, Inc., that integrates mind, body, spirituality, wellness with clinical approaches for a holistic program to overall brain health. And the center serves both to educate and apply Dr. Nussbaum's brain health lifestyle for all ages, which I love that it's intergenerational and it can apply to all. Dr. Nussbaum has 30 years experience in care of adults and older persons suffering from dementia, head injuries, and many other neuropsychiatric disorders. He is an expert in human behavior. He's been published in many peer review articles, books, chapters within the scientific community, extremely well respected. And he also serves on the editorial boards for several scientific and clinical journals. So welcome back, Dr. Nussbaum. How are you doing?
Hey, Lori. Great to see you, and thanks for having me back, and congratulations on all your great work across the country.
Well, thank you. We're all doing it together, you know. It's and that's what's really fun, to meet other people that really have a passion to make a difference. And so to me, that's just so exciting. I'm going to introduce next your cohort here, Stephen Swartz. He is the Chief Operations Officer for WellQor, who brings more than 25 years of executive experience to the company, from Fortune 500 corporations to startups. Steve has successfully supported product and process development, enterprise resource planning, and customer relationship management. Steve brings further expertise in qualifying business trends and deploying market initiatives, two critical things for any business to be successful, especially in today's market. For almost the last decade, he has concentrated on developing innovative methods to ensure quality of clinical services within the senior living marketplace. He holds a bachelor's degree from Skidmore College and an advanced certificate in healthcare management from Stony Brook School of Health Technology and Management, as well as an MBA from Stony Brook University. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much. It's truly an honor to be part of this, and just want to thank you, Lori, for all the wonderful work that you do, as well as the support and effort from your viewers and what they provide to the national consciousness of what we're all trying to achieve, not only with Alzheimer's, but dementia in general, and especially with the focus in today's day and age within senior living communities and the full spectrum. We're talking not only just the memory care and of course the skilled nursing, but independent living and assisted living. It's something that we're proud to be a part of, to help the residents and the individuals not only living within those communities, but supporting those that are there as well as those that are working within.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things too that I love about your company is, you're working with everyone, and so many times we forget about those giving care that needs support as well. And sometimes we end up focusing just on those diagnosed, but this really is a family and a community thing that we have to look at, and mental health as a whole is just out of control right now, and we need so much support and kindness in that area. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation. But before we really jump into your company, I still want to ask one little question of each of you that I like to ask of all my guests, and that is, and I'll throw this to you first, Steve. Have you personally been touched by family or friends who have had any form of dementia?
Yes. I was very fortunate growing up to have a great grandmother that lived to well above 100. But in the time in my life that I got to know her, which was in my teens, for a little bit over a decade, dementia had fully set in. And just seeing how that affected at the time my grandparents, my father, my mother, were, being with her and visiting her within what was then skilled nursing. First of all, hats off to those individuals during the, aging myself a little bit now, but in the late 70s into the 80s that did such a phenomenal job with her in the communities and the living environments that she was in back then. But it was a real eye opener as a young adult and coming of age, and then making decisions on where I wanted to take my career path. That was always in the back of my mind. And, we loved her very much. But to just see that as time went on, that she just really was not there from her late 80s until the day that she passed. Very challenging on the whole of the family.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Paul, how about you?
Yeah, so Lori, my professional journey began at age 21, working in a specialized unit here in Western Pennsylvania for those suffering from Alzheimer's. At that time, I'm even older than Steve, so at that time in Western Pennsylvania, that was quite progressive to have that kind of program. So over the many years, 30 years, thousands of individuals on a personal level, had a grandmother who saw go through the progressive stages of Alzheimer's, and watching how it impacts the family, and all of the first and second goodbyes and the losses that go along with that. And then more recently, an aunt that my wife and I provided primary care for, if you will, as a caregiver for the family side. She was a bit isolated. Watching that occur. She's no longer with us and in a better place, but, really had the caregiver hat on there on a personal level. So no doubt, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you both for sharing. I think it just gives everybody a little peek into where you're coming from in this space. So I want to start out, and Paul, I'm going to throw this first question out to you, because mental health continues to be under-recognized. I mean, we hear about it on the news every single day, and it's under-addressed in the U.S. As far as funding goes and services. And this is really true for older adults, yet we don't seem to be talking about it as much as I think what we should. So what are some ideas that you guys have for this glaring problem?
Well, you're absolutely right. We're seeing a spiraling, almost epidemic of suicide in this country. We're seeing issues of mental health, particularly in the younger adult, as we get this information from the media almost on a daily basis. But you're right, Lori. This goes back to the time when I first began my own career. For some reason, in the United States of America, we tend to be a youth-driven sort of a country and culture. We tend not to pay enough attention to older adults, and certainly that's true for mental health. And so there is indeed a glaring need to have a conversation, to have lobbying going on, to have increased legislation and monies put forward, and folks like yourself and hopefully Steve and I coming forward to provide expertise and programming that one recognizes that it really does not matter how old you are, what your age is chronologically. We are human beings throughout. We suffer, we champion, we celebrate all of the things known as the human condition. And certainly what we know from the data and the research with older adults in the United States of America, major depression continues to be a disabling condition, not only in the United States of America, but on the world stage. If you look at the World Health Organization, what it says about depression as a percentage per capita of the number of older adults in America, suicide is alarming. And we don't talk enough about that, particularly the widower, the man who has lost a loved one, but also for females who are aging successfully and then incurring mental health problems. Anxiety, a huge problem for the older adult. It is not just an issue with younger adults. Loneliness, we've learned more and more, and I know, Lori, you and I talked about this before. Loneliness is an incredible risk factor for dementia.
Yep.
And now we can add into the what they call the tsunami of Alzheimer's disease and related cognitive problems, where we're going to go from about 5.2 million Americans today, most of them age 65 and over, but not all, to about 15 or more million Americans in the next several decades. And at this time, while we do have a number of heroes and champions leading the charge to care for these folks, we're nowhere near where we need to be as a country, and we need to become more enlightened with regard to the older adult in terms of not only their needs, but as you pointed out, Lori, the family's needs. It's a family system issue. So those are just a few of the things, and it really is what, I think all three of us are about, and certainly what WellQor is about, and certainly what Alzheimer's Speaks is about, which is coming forward to kind of lead a charge and to tell everybody to get on the train and say, let's be the best we can in the United States of America for this wonderful generation that has done so much for us already, and care for them in ways that are both proactive and health promoting.
Great, thank you. Steve, do you have anything you want to add in on that?
Yeah, you know what, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's an amazing time period that we're in right now. As I mentioned before when I was talking about my great-grandmother and what senior living was back then, and when in the 80s, it really did start with, hey, let's start with activities in senior living communities. You had all these amazing organizations when it came to the health of your heart. And the more that you stayed active and exercised, the greater the chance you were to stave off anything that might come with any type of physical challenges as you were growing older. And it was all about that. Here we are 35 years later. And in the last 5 years, and then hopefully for many, many more years to come, there's just been a tremendous, I don't want to say shift, but an enhanced focus. That wellness pie now really has a huge chunk of it focused on psychological, on mental wellness within senior communities, and recognizing that staying active, being vibrant, also getting that clinical care, that one-on-one or those group situations where somebody professional, and in WellQor's case, we have psychologists, neuropsychologists, licensed clinical social workers that are there to evaluate, to assess, and then provide ongoing programs, that can help with a full array of what you would see, when it comes to tremendous number of issues that exist within senior living, from mood disorders to cognitive and behavioral, but also, as we mentioned before, even working with the caregivers. Senior living, because I want to make mention on something that you said before, Lori, as an industry, has one of the highest turnover rates. And the reason being is people get burned out. They care so much about the individuals, our loved ones, our mothers, our fathers, our uncles, our aunts, brothers and sisters that are in these communities. And naturally, with aging and how aging takes place, there are going to be issues. But when those issues are compounded by any number of items, socialization issues, financial issues, health issues, it's just a very tough place to work. And I myself, I did come from working on that side. I started my career in hospitality management, and that ventured into senior living. And I was able to see it myself. And when somebody's moving into your community, everybody has to have what's called a primary care workup, right? Your regular doctor has to give a report, and most managers and caregivers working with them in that community can see as soon as that person walks in the door what maybe some of the physical challenges are, or some of the, those type of health issues. But, back then, and I think they still refer to it now, we refer to it as the unfortunate twos, which is whether it's 2 weeks later, sometimes 2 months later, all of a sudden, some other things are coming out that you were not really aware of, because that primary care physician was really unable to do a full psychological profile, and add that to their wellness assessments. And now what you're seeing in senior living, and we've been a big part of that, and I'm probably taking the wind out of something in the future that Dr. Nussbaum is going to be talking to you about, but the ability to be at the forefront of case management, which is what is unique with us, right? Your question really revolved around, well, what is it unique that you can bring to the table? By being proactive, and that's a very big word for us, but by being proactive and being at the forefront of evaluations and assessments, we can help these teams, these wonderful people that are there to maintain as much independence as possible of your loved ones in their communities. We can help them be at the forefront of case management to ensure that they're matched up and set up with the right type of activities and the right type of quality of life that they need to move forward with and to hopefully prosper. Everybody moves into senior living in one stage or another with different challenges, and some people just gave up their car keys after 50 years or their house after 35 years or whatever the case may be, and they're going to be onset with a whole litany of different challenges right in front of them in this new environment that they're now calling home. And part of our job is not only to evaluate and assess, but to work with them in one of our programs to really help them become part of the fabric of that community.
I think that makes so much sense. I used to be in healthcare ages ago, and then my mom was in a nursing home for 14 years, and just seeing the process of what people go through. I mean, most of them land there because of maybe a medical condition, or they're not able to do quite everything they used to be able to do. But being able to twist that and focus on what can they do, and in building up that ego and making them comfortable and socially engaged. I don't know how we've missed that for so long. It's really been, kind of a bing, bang, boom part of a plan. When you go to a care plan meeting, anyways, this is how it was for me. There was always a nurse, there was a dietitian, there was a social worker. And then they would kind of skim over, what the doctor had to say, but there really wasn't anything from a social standpoint. And you'd hear a little bit from the activities person whose job was to keep people engaged, and probably was one of the most critical people in terms of knowing what's actually going on with the person because they have more contact. Yet in most cases, what I found was, their opinion really valued a whole heck of a lot. And yet they saw so much, and I think continue to. And I think that, that allowing them that comfort and that peace and helping them through that transition and making it one of empowerment and really a team effort that, it shouldn't be an embarrassment. This is, anytime anyone goes through a change, we have struggles. We have to learn how to adapt again. And that piece, I guess, I didn't see it near as active as I'd like to. So I think what you guys are doing is brilliant and will alleviate behaviors. It will improve health. It will probably help staff stay a little bit longer and not get burnt out. It'll complement families and their understanding of what somebody is going through, because I think there's kind of a battle between family and staff, and that can be settled down, I think, through this process as well, on what everybody is seeing and because really what everyone is seeing comes down to what they're feeling, but no one's talking about the feelings.
Right.
So
Very well said.
in digging a little bit deeper, Paul, I'll throw this one to you. We have such a huge variety of type of senior care communities out there, and different terminology kind of for the same thing, and from state to state they're different, and it gets confusing for people in the United States, and it gets, I think, confusing for staff working, because they hop around these different communities too in terms of what's expected. Are these organizations really addressing the mental health needs of older adults? Have you seen many of them doing that, or any of them doing that? And and or maybe they're on track. From what I've seen, probably not so much in terms of the depth that I think your company can offer. The only time I really saw the psychology part come in play was when there was a behavior. And not everybody has to have an aggressive behavior to have issues. And that's, I think, where you see the anxiety and the turmoil that can kick into all kinds of then medical issues, for individuals. But I'll let you answer that question, not me.
So I think I have a good insight to that. I've worked many, many years with some of the largest senior care organizations in the country, and it's really not geographic in nature at all. And there is certainly, we're getting better, Lori. Senior care is defined by the continuum of care, has come really from a hospitality-based culture now into healthcare, and there's some turbulence along the way. And there's some really well-intentioned, smart executives that I've had the pleasure to learn from and get to know, but I've been very frank with them, and I've been very frank with anyone that cares to listen that, look, we started already saying the United States of America, we're not where we need to be with regard to mental health, awareness, education, understanding, and practical program implementation for the older adult. That's certainly true within senior care. And now we can stand back and complain or insult, and that's not what WellQor is about. We're trying to fill a void to come up with some answers. So, what do we do? First of all, as I've already said, we need to have a conversation about the existence of mental health issues with the older adult population, particularly the residents living within senior care, understanding that caregivers, both the staff professionally and the family, are going to be part of that story. We then need to have an honest conversation about, in my opinion, as the Chief Clinical Officer for WellQor, we need to know what we're dealing with. And the only way you're going to know what you're dealing with in terms of one's psychological status is you have to do a proper diagnostic interview followed up by at least a cursory set of tests that give you some sense of where this person's cognitive ability is, where their emotional status is, where their relational ability is, and really get to know them. As a practical example, across the country, greatest country the world knows, we have wonderful senior care organizations that have ventured into what's called memory care. Well, I always challenge CEOs at these places, what do you mean by that? Is that an older adult with a memory problem? Yes. What's the memory problem caused by? And that's where the conversation starts to get a little slippery. And as a clinician really interested in this stuff, it's a critically important question, because we can't just say an older adult with beautiful white hair who's got memory problems has Alzheimer's. She may not. There's 100 causes of dementia. You know this, Laura. You're an expert at this. And the medical field's every bit as bad at this. We just simply apply a label and we think it's this, so now we treat the person as if they have Alzheimer's. Well, most memory care programs in the United States of America within senior care are almost by default presumed to be an Alzheimer's program. And that's fair, but you better call it that. Now, let's take it from there. Let's say that's an Alzheimer's program. Alzheimer's, as you know, can last 2 to 20 years. So within your memory care program, that's really an Alzheimer's program, do we want to build a continuum within the memory care Alzheimer's program, which I always believe is a good thing. And so the only way you're going to know where a person is in that process, that staging, is you have to have pretty good numbers set up to know where they are in their cognitive ability and their staging of decline, what that means behaviorally. If behavioral problems arise, and you know this, Lori, they're going to arise. And in my opinion, what I always tell the executives at these healthcare organizations, senior care organizations, memory and problems really is not going to be your big issue. It's going to be behavioral acuity issues, the agitation, the hallucinations, the aggressive impulses sometimes that arise when the brain is afflicted with dementia. So having an entity like WellQor involved, not as a consultant, and I mean that sort of psychologically, we're not full-time employees with the organizations, but we're there enough to be considered part of the team. I can't tell you how important that is. I'm a consultant myself, Paul Nussbaum. I've gone into many places out there. I go in, as you were talking about, Lori, and a nurse will hand me a list of residents I'm supposed to see, and then I leave. And I do the best job I can. And I talk to the families and the staff and everything, and I do a good job, but it's not what is needed. What is needed is for an entity like WellQor to team up with whatever the name of the senior care organization is, to team up with the family members and the residents to be there on site so that that care team can know when they go to bed at night, we're going to be there if something comes up. So that resident knows who we are, so that we're at the care planning table. So when you add in things like expertise, both from an executive and from a clinical perspective, when you add in a state-of-the-art diagnostic protocol, a comprehensive treatment program that includes family, staff, and resident, and the presence, peace of mind of knowing that we're there, we're going to be present with you, you started that practical application we've talked about. Now, are we perfect? Nope, we're not. We've got to learn a lot of things, but you know what? Right now, I can tell you with all kind of confidence, we're really at the tip of the spear out there. We're really pioneering this within the senior care community, those things I just talked about. And we think we have an opportunity to do this with so many leaders like yourself and the executives out there in senior care and the good people that are working there to really do what? Increase the level of sophistication, credibility, and expertise and quality of care for the residents that are living there. Most of, that may be too strong, a lot of the individuals living in senior care are struggling. I've had CEOs look me right in the face and say, you're right, Paul, we don't know enough about who is actually struggling in our community. We don't. Mr. Jones is not coming out of his room. We don't know why that is. We're seeing changes in behavior. We don't know why that is, because it's not good enough just to call in an MD or a psychologist every 4 weeks. That is not what we want for our mothers and fathers in this country. So a bit long-winded, but that's the kind of deep dive we have to take to get where we all want to go, which is the best system in the world to care for our older adults from a psychological perspective.
Well, and one of the things that I like about that, speaking from, a daughter who had a mom in a nursing home, is, when we switched from going to outside doctors to going to the in-house doctor, her stress came way down. Again, part of that was because of her progression, but I just felt like the doctor understood so much more because they have a better feel of the community, so they can give better input instead of this hit and miss.
Right.
I just think there's so many different pluses to that, and then feeling part of that team, because one of the things that I also see as I travel the country sometimes is if people are getting different advice from different people, and so then staff isn't getting a consistent message in terms of what are we supposed to do when somebody acts like this, or when someone's having an issue like this. And when you have that consistent team, and when you're all meeting together, you're just going to have better care. I can't see how you're not going to. And I know that there are, even like with my own folks, they didn't want to switch their doctor. They felt really comfortable, and you have to respect that as well. But having this as added value, I think could be pitched, but we have to get the stigma pushed aside. That, you're not crazy if you're seeing a psychologist, or if you need the help of a social worker. This is all common stuff. And this will help you, like you said, be happier and live better, and a healthier life. Steve, I'm sure you have some things to add to that.
Paul started off by saying it exactly correct. It's getting better. But in many ways and in many parts of the country, it's still hit or miss. And I would advise your viewers, always do your research. You're going to come across senior living environments where they say they have something, and 10 years ago, a decade ago, it was who was going to get this all-encompassing cognitive computer program that their residents could use and would better themselves on that, only to find out after some time that it was really the grandkids when they came into these communities were using it more often than anybody else, just for some time, and that was it. And then, as Paul mentioned before, you had these memory care situations come out and programs come out, and I myself was a part of one of them for a little while, and that is just a very small part of what a true geriatric psychological practice should and could be providing to the community. So whether it's WellQor or another group, you want to make sure, and there aren't that many, there's no one else that's national, but it might be somebody local, but you want to make sure that it is, as Paul said before, a true integration with the staff. We refer to it as the WellQor way, right? What that means to us is plain and simple is, yes, we're going to have residents that we assess, that we evaluate, that we provide ongoing, therapies for, be it for psychosocial issues, cognitive issues, mood, behavioral, etc. But the reality is, we're there for all parts of the community. And if the staff needs us to assist with a family member that has questions, even if it's not a resident or, one of the residents that we work with, or if it's another resident that we're not working with, we're a part of their staff and we're going to be there for them. I may have mentioned before, that when it comes to the staffs and how they do things, every state is very different, and they all have their different go-to elements. And in some situations in senior care, if they don't have a reference point like a WellQor, or they don't have anybody, like us to be able to work with them, the only outlet that they have is what the state mandates. And oftentimes that means bringing in an outside entity, a state entity, to come in and help with the situation or remove that resident temporarily for. And it can just provide such hardships for the family. So, with everything that you were saying, Lori, and obviously you, Dr. Nussbaum, my biggest advice to your viewers out there is do a little bit of research, make sure that the community that you're working with truly has reference points that either is WellQor or liking of WellQor. You just want to be safe than sorry.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you brought up was, the geriatric practice, which, we don't have enough geriatricians, period. And people in the medical sphere focused on this. And that's a critical piece that is needed. I can't tell you how many people just in the last month I've talked to that have been looking for, because their person is having behaviors, being kicked out, has to go to a geri psych unit. And, a program like yours might have been able to avoid that and figure out what is causing this, instead of always throwing the medication at somebody and putting them in a different environment that is scary to them and uncomfortable. And not that we don't have to baseline and pull everybody off meds every now and then, but I see the frustration that the family goes through. I see more than once, probably almost every single time, family will go, I don't understand why the problem is these staff don't have an issue. They have the same behavior, but they react differently. And these ones have a problem, and now they're getting kicked out. And so, some of that is, is a training thing. And it's, if you don't have the support behind you to say, this is the way we're going to do this, and be monitored, and kind of that professional voice saying, there's a better way. It's really, in my position, it's really, really frustrating. And I'm sure it is yours as well, to see things like that happening, and they're becoming much more common because
Laura, we're very fortunate at WellQor to have somebody like Dr. Nussbaum as our chief clinical officer. He is one of literally, and this is a sad thing to say, especially, with the baby boomers entering, this environment now, but he's one of a handful of geropsychologists in the whole of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he can speak more to that, but there's just so many gaps out there as you go from different organizations and different companies. Some of them really do it very well and have really, just become proactive and are really on the cutting edge of this. Others are playing catch up very quickly, but they still have a long way to go, and there's still a learning curve for them. But when you put the right people in the right place, and that's what any business does, and we feel that we've done just that, you're going to make a difference. And we feel each and every day with each and every community and each and every resident that we're working with, we are difference makers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know that you really handpick your staff too. So, that's another thing that can be really scary for just families. If they want to reach out, if they want to get this, who do they go to? Do they really, I mean, because, we're all, you don't know what you don't know till you don't know it, and then you figure it out. And then it's kind of too late, and you've all been through the ringer, and now y'all need help, and so having that in place makes, I think, such a big difference. Steve, I wanted to ask you, because you guys are, WellQor is a new company, and you're dedicated to providing comprehensive psychological services, to older adults living in senior care. How are you situated to really actually be able to help those needs? Can you break that down a little bit more on how you would work specifically with not only the company, but the family and the individual?
Sure. Well, Lori, you actually started off very nicely by mentioning the quality of the network and the staff that we have. We are a national group. We're growing into more states with every quarter. But it all starts with the quality of the individual that we bring into our organization, into our company. And not only in the training that is overseen and fostered by Dr. Nussbaum to integrate them properly from a clinical perspective, but also individuals like myself and several other support staff that come from senior living that get to know the various different communities that we work with, to make sure that we integrate our teams the right way. Because as we said a few moments ago, it really is about us being a part of the staff, not seen as a third-party vendor. And that is extremely important when recognizing the full elements of the wellness program, mind, body, and spirit, but the full elements of a wellness program that any community has out there. And any good community leader is going to know that you cannot get any type of wellness program off the ground without making sure that a company like WellQor, with the references and the individuals that we have, are at the forefront of any type of case management, to make sure of the quality measures, to ensure, to help with the staffing that sometimes can be lacking in certain senior living communities. But our clinicians, from the very moment that they start with us and start our training and then are onboarded and brought into the community, it's one word, Lori, which is ingrained in their head, and that word is communication. Okay, it is communicating obviously very effectively with the residents with whom they service and provide clinical support to and enable assessments for, but it is communication with the other staff that is there, within the other clinical services that are provided. There is a whole living, breathing support staff of clinicians and caregivers there. And if we're not at the forefront of that case management, if we're not at the forefront of the communication standards that are brought into that community, we're failing at our jobs. But that communication, that's only 50% of it. The other 50% is communication that has to exist with the family members, with the loved ones, with those that are the healthcare POAs, which is such a vital element with anybody who's aging within senior living communities. It's the ability for our clinicians to be in touch with them, remain in touch with them. There are even certain clinical services that we involve them to be a part of, so that we're all striving for one goal, and yes, our mission is to enable optimal quality of life and independent functioning for those residents that we serve, no matter where they are in the spectrum of senior living. But we are not going to get there, as a lone wolf going at it on our own. It truly takes a village. It truly takes a community to make sure that the residents are able to thrive and become part of the fabric social structure. Even those that are in memory care and are already seeing tremendous disadvantages, with the dementia that they may have, or another element that is challenging to them. There are always ways, to be able to work with those individuals, work with the staff, and work with the family members to bring about the most positive results. And sometimes the most positive results, Lori, is just stagnation. Making sure that that slippery slope slows down in some ways, or finding coping skills to, better wrap your arms around different things. And that's what Dr. Nussbaum has done such a wonderful job in helping to make sure that our clinicians know what to do, and being a reference point to them. I don't think there's a day that goes by that at least a dozen of our clinicians isn't reaching out to him or certain of other of our lead psychologists, just to make sure that they get the best ideas to cope with the various issues that they may have.
Yeah. Well, and I can't agree with you more in terms of philosophy there and that team support. I think, to me, one of the problems with our world as a whole is that we seem to have forgotten that each one of us affects other people. Everyone's kind of running around in their own little bubble thinking, well, what I do doesn't affect you, but it does. And especially when it comes to dementia, a lot of times it's our actions they're reacting to. It might not be our words, but it might just be our body language. And people need to really consciously care a lot more, and look at the whole picture. And, our families a lot of times, and staff alike, will take things personal. Well, they're doing that to get me or push my buttons. And it's like, no, it really doesn't have anything to do with you. It has some, let's go back to being person-centered and seeing what's going on with them. And having those conversations, I think, are so critical and so often missed. And, to me, that's just a humongous factor. Paul, do you have anything to add on that?
I would just say that, everything for me is built off of that initial assessment, which makes WellQor so very unique, because then that guides the care plan, right? And for us, Lori, we couldn't take everything on at once. So, part of my job was to kind of create the strategic plan clinically. And we have very distinct clinical programs. For example, a mood disorders program where we really, want to treat folks with depression and anxiety. We talked about that a little bit. We have a neurocognitive clinical program where you get into the dementia there, the memory issues. Sometimes it's a head injury.
Mm-hmm.
With older adults who have a lot of falls, as you know, it tends to get underrepresented. It might be a seizure disorder. We have a caregiver program that really goes after exactly what we've been talking about here today. And then certainly one of the most important, I think, is going to be this behavioral modification program where, that's where you're dealing primarily with agitation and perhaps psychosis, acting out, not typical of the person's character, certainly, but caused by perhaps a dementia. And that's where we want to be able to help that community, help that family. And a lot of what I hear you saying, Lori, is so true that I think if we as WellQor with the community can increase the amount of education and the understanding of what's going on, all of the anxiety sometimes really dissipates a bit, because the more we know, the less we prejudge, the less we are concerned about or anxious about, the more everybody can contribute to those answers. The training program at WellQor is very intensive, and the WellQor way is really about everyone coming on board, understanding what I call the dance, the clinical dance is, step 1, step 2, and you don't go into clinical programs, treatment programs, until you know exactly what we're dealing with. We have a wonderful electronic medical record, it's all HIPAA compliant. So it's a pretty sophisticated endeavor that I think we have a chance to really make a difference, and we're growing pretty fast, Lori. And for me, at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with name or ego or anything like that. It's really all about, at this time in my life, about trying to make a difference for the older adult. And I think WellQor's got a chance to do that.
Great. We've talked a lot about the unique ways that you guys are making a difference and your approaches. Steve, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I'm just very grateful that from a business sense, a relatively short period of time, although, Paul and I have known each other and worked with each other for years, and several people within WellQor right now have as well. But in WellQor coming together in the way that we have over the last year and a half, and the partners that we've been able to bring on board, the senior living companies and organizations that have really just jumped on board, not even just 100%, 125%. When you can develop a true partnership between a senior living community staff and the healthcare elements that are so vital to the residents, you're going to create a wonderful environment for those within the communities. And we're just very grateful to be, I think, in the right place at the right time. As we mentioned before, the greatest generation is there right now, and the things that those individuals did, in the last century and up till now have been tremendous. But now you're looking towards baby boomers, and they were not taught how to draw within the lines. They go outside of it. It's a very different mentality, and I'd like to think that WellQor uniquely understands that, and gone. I don't want to say gone completely, but where there may have once been a stigma with psychological care, we're seeing those walls come down with each year that progresses, and the recognition that as somebody is looking at a community in the future, you want it to really be able to help you out with all facets of your life. Aging can be difficult. It's a very true statement. But if you have the right support systems, and it starts with your family, but if you have the right support systems surrounding you, you maintain independence for as long as possible, but you can also, just have some semblance of yourself for a long time to come.
Do you, Steve, do you want to talk about any of the, or maybe mention any of the companies that are working with you now, or is there just too many and you're afraid you might miss some?
There is a little bit of that. I might defer to Dr. Nussbaum on that. There's a couple in particular that I'd really like to mention. New Perspective has just been a fantastic partner with us, and looking to continue to grow with them in the Midwest. And I think they're soon going to be going beyond that. We do work with a tremendous number coast to coast. So I don't want to mention an awful lot for that very reason that you just said, Lori, but that company in particular has been tremendous, as has companies like Zura Memory Care and a few others of that. They really just recognize that this needs to very much be a part of not only their future but who they are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm familiar with New Perspectives. They're right here. I'm in Minnesota, and so they're right here in Minnesota, and they've always been pretty progressive in terms of what they're looking at doing. Paul, was there any that you wanted to mention offhand, or?
We've, I had a relationship with Chris Hyatt from Brookdale in my emeritus days. I was at emeritus for 13 years. As you know, they were integrated with Brookdale, and we do work a bit with some facilities with Brookdale, and great organization there. I had the pleasure of working with them for a year as National Director of Brain Health, 13 years at emeritus as National Director of Brain Health. That got us in a New Perspective. We're in at least 8 states right now, Lori, excuse me, and that's going to be growing fairly rapidly. In my own niche within WellQor, Steve, am I pretty accurate now? We're probably close to 200 or more clinicians. I know that changes every day. That's why I don't have the exact number. So
you're in the right ballpark.
Yeah,
you're in the right ballpark.
And Lori, from we're working with different companies within the brain fitness space, such as the Roberto and the RC21X. As you know, we had a good conversation on that with you. And some others that we're working with now. Fit Minds is a wonderful program out of Canada that works with a caregiver in the brain fitness space. So we're trying to bring all entities into this and make it really a complete package for facilities to take us on as part of their team.
Wonderful. Yeah, I thought I saw Atria that you guys worked with too,
Yeah,
and I was really, really impressed with them when I was out east.
Yeah.
We work with a lot of different Atrias and Sunrise, and Paul had mentioned Brookdales, and several other of the large organizations, as well as some really fantastic independent situations all across the U.S. And we're in 175 communities right now.
Oh, that's great.
As the business entity here within WellQor, of course, I want that to just, to do it. But Paul is always the anchor. Dr. Nussbaum is always the anchor saying, wait a minute, quality over quantity every day, every week. And he is the one that grounds us to make sure that no matter where we go and what we do, that supersedes everything.
Well, that's wonderful, because that's how you lose direction, and that's how you start crumbling apart. So it's nice to have such a solid anchor and team that really gets that. Steve, if you want to mention just one more time the types of professionals that you have within your company to offer, just as a reminder for people, I think that would be great.
We, of course, have psychologists, we have neuropsychologists, and we have social workers, but these are licensed clinical social workers. So, and this is not to say that, other mental health individuals, nothing to say negative about that. It's just that when you're dealing with an LCSW, like the psychologist and social worker, the amount of hours that they have to put in to get that extra credentialing is tremendous. And we really put a little bit of a cachet on the type of candidates that we bring into our organizations. And I should also mention that we always don't go with every senior living community that reaches out to us, or we initially maybe look into. There are qualifiers to make sure that we can truly engage in that partnership. And if they're unwilling to do that, or there's a lot of back and forth that is not putting the residents and their family, at the top of that triangle, if you will, then it's just not a partnership that we can follow.
Okay, great. Now, what is the best way for people to reach you, Steve?
Well, we do have a website, and that is WellQor, WELLQOR. So wellness, and QOR stands for quality of results.com. So WellQor.com. And you can certainly message us through the website. We also have an email address, info at wellqor.com. Our corporate office number, we invite anybody at any time to give a call. Give a call to me directly, but that number is 844-888-0355. And once you call, you'll get a full directory or somebody will pick up immediately soon after. But if you want to reach me directly, my extension is 1003. And as Dr. Nussbaum will tell you, I spend half my days on the phone talking to almost anybody. So I am very happy to be that first person with whom you might have contact with. But again, that phone number is 844-888-0355. And or the email address, which is info@wellqor.com.
Wonderful. Thank you. Paul, anything you want to add?
The only other thing I would say, I wanted to mention, we have another really great executive and founder. Steve is a founder, as I am, of WellQor, but Dan Chomsky is our Chief Financial Officer, who really comes with a lot of experience. Dan in the financial sector and running healthcare organizations. Dan and Steve are in New York, Lori, and as you know, I'm in Pittsburgh, and so we're excited to hear from a lot of your viewers and all the network that you've built up. You had told me about how voluminous your network is, Lori, within senior care, which is just a credit to you and awesome. And I know you and I go back a way, so this is another way I think our path can continue to cross, Lori, with the goal of helping older adults, in this case, the mental health and brain health perspective.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you both for spending this last hour with us. I think it was a very interesting conversation, and I hope that people reach out to you and learn more, bring it into their communities, and market this, to their communities. I just think this is such a huge benefit, especially in the day and age that we're in right now. It couldn't be better timing, with all
Lori,
of.
let me just say one quick thing. We work with Medicare very closely.
Okay.
And part of what Paul said. Dan Chomsky comes from that world, and it is, payers are not easy to work with, for many of those that your viewers are supporting, or the viewers themselves. And what Dan Chomsky does bring to us as being sort of that third leg of our tripod here is, helping those that are our residents and their families navigate through this. And he's done a fantastic job with that.
And because it's a third-party payer through Medicare, Lori, a lot of the executives at the organizations will say, what's the cost? It's really minimum because our services are billed through Part B Medicare.
Okay. One thing that I think might be a nice tie-in with you guys, you might want to look into. There's a organization that is just coming to the U.S. It's called the World Kindness USA, and it's off. They're off and running in Australia and Europe and the UK and Asia, and Michael Lloyd White is heading it up. I got to meet him the other day, and it's when you're working, especially in communities, I just think it would be a great way, to say thank you, and to have that positive spin. Yeah. And I've become a founding member of it, and they're doing a launch in LA, I want to say late July, the 27th and 28th.
Okay.
He was here earlier. He was in Minnesota. He was in Colorado. He was in California. I mean, he's all over Arizona, and then he's coming back to hop a few more states. But just a really inspiring man. In fact, he just got the most inspiring man of 2018 over in Australia and had to fly back to go receive his award and then come back to the U.S. But I think that whole piece of kindness and comfort, allows us to live happier and healthier lives. And it's something that crosses all generations and, all barriers. And so I just thought I would mention that to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Laurie. I will absolutely. I know Paul will. Dr. Nussbaum and I will absolutely look at World Kindness USA. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. They have little business cards. And when you see an act of kindness, or when you get the card, you register it. And then when you see an act of kindness, you go onto the computer, you register your story, and then you give it to the person who was kind to you. And then it moves on. And so then every time there's an act of kindness on your card, you get notified, and it gets pushed out to social media. And it's just a neat thing. It doesn't.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I think it's just a good thing for the soul. And I think souls are longing for that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good medicine.
Very much here. So again, guys, thank you so much for your time and your work. I think this is a tremendous business, and I can't wait to watch you guys grow. And thank you so much. And
thank you, Lord. Really appreciate your time.
Shout out to Calendar Cards. It starts with a K for both calendar and cards. They're a memory system who help people manage their day. They also are gracious enough, they have created the Memory Cafe directory. And so if you're looking for a Memory Cafe, or if you want to get your Memory Cafe directory listed, just go to memorycafedirectory.com, and it's for the US only, but Dave just does an excellent job there. The other one I want to mention is the Purple Table Reservations. This is a system that a gal put together who owned a restaurant. Her mom had dementia. They started having gatherings in her restaurant. She's now put together a training program, and they are trying to get out to other restaurants to become trained so that people can call in and say, need a purple table. And it's not like you're going to have a purple flag and everyone's going to know, and it's not just for dementia, but it's for people with anxiety, autism, post-traumatic stress that just need a little special attention. Maybe they need a quieter area, maybe they need a smaller menu, but somebody who knows how to communicate better and situate them. And so you just go to purpletables.com, and I think that'll be just a wonderful way to help everybody out in the long run. So again, people can go to WellQor.com. That's WellQor.com, or at wellqor.com. And again, their phone number, one more time, is 844-888-0355. Have a best week, you guys. Talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.